Hey everybody, RJ here. Sorry for the wait. I had college and stuff, but I'm back and today I got another theory for you. It's a problem I've seen come up quite a bit in the community, and I think I got an answer for you all. As always, I know the actual answer to this question is something along the lines of plot convenience and the writers didn't think of it, but I always look for a canon explanation when I can, so let's dive in. Why do the laws of hyperspace travel always seem to be inconsistent in Star Wars? If you don't know what I mean, let me remind you about interdictor technology. The basis behind it is that the Empire uses gravity generators to pull rebel ships out of hyperspace or prevent them from leaving battle zones. Why does this work? Because all ships come with a failsafe that prevents them from going into hyperspace when a gravity well is detected. This is to prevent ships from colliding with things like planets and stars while in hyperspace. The gravity generators trigger the failsafe and the hyperdrive no worky. The problem with this is, well, why does the failsafe even exist in the first place? If hyperlanes are known paths through the galaxy, why would a ship need to have a failsafe for hitting a star? Shouldn't there be no stars inside of hyperlanes? And if this failsafe is only then for unstable or constantly shifting hyperlanes, shouldn't it be more of an optional failsafe, turned on only when going through those specific hyperlanes, not something that's always on? Well, it's not exactly worthy of a whole video to say that maybe, just maybe, a bunch of asteroids or another ship could also be occupying that hyperlane, so the failsafe would probably have to be in there to account for that. Not to mention, we don't know exactly how stable even the major hyperlanes are. Large celestial bodies moving in and through them could be a pretty common occurrence, one that we would never really see pop up in the movies, TV shows, or even the books and comics because, let's be honest, what essentially amounts to space traffic isn't exactly the most interesting plot device. So, now we get to the big question. Why don't rebel ships just turn off the failsafe to jump out of an interdictor cruiser's gravity well? We know that it is possible to turn off the failsafe, but that it's not done a whole lot. Well, first I'd like to remind everyone of the two functions of the failsafe. One, pull ships out of hyperspace when a gravity well is approaching, or two, prevent ships from entering hyperspace when a gravity well is too close. Now, why does this second parameter exist? Well, it's possible that the gravity sensor is not all that advanced and can only really sense when a gravity well is nearby, and then it turns the hyperdrive off. This would mean that it's really only there for the first function, but just so happens to happen for the second function as well. But I think it's more likely that it is specifically to prevent the ship from jumping while inside of a gravity well. This is to prevent the ship from being torn apart by the effects of gravity. Why would this happen, you say? Well, I'm no expert on Star Wars physics, but it's probably got something to do with being pulled in one direction while traveling faster than the speed of light in the other. This could also explain why ships don't jump to light speed when inside of tractor beams. Probably also tear the ship apart. Now, there are some times where we see what appear to be exceptions to this rule, namely the episode from the Clone Wars with Aayla Secura, the separatist fire weapon, and the pacifist monkey people. There are two important things about this situation, though. First of all, they are very high above the planet when they do go into hyperspace. High enough, I believe, to avoid being pulled apart by entering hyperspace. This may seem far-fetched, since they are still inside the planet's atmosphere, but they are just barely inside the atmosphere. Based on the curvature of the planet, I'd guess that they're inside the stratosphere. So, the gravity at that point might just be low enough to allow for a jump without seriously damaging the ship. Second, we know the failsafe has been deactivated when the hyperdrive got damaged because the ship almost crashes into a star in hyperspace, something the failsafe should be able to prevent. But it doesn't, which means it must have been damaged. But again, that's not important since they should be able to jump anyway. Although, I suppose the fact that they're about to jump into a Venator should also count as running into a gravity well, so there you go. We also see this happen in Rogue One, where, again, I believe they are far enough above the planet to avoid 1, the failsafe triggering, and 2, the ship being destroyed from the planet's gravity. Lastly, it happens again in Star Wars Rebels, where we can see Hera enter hyperspace and fly through an Imperial construction ship while entering hyperspace. And in this instance, I think we do actually see her turn the failsafe off. Otherwise, it would shut off the hyperdrive since it would be detecting a source of gravity that is on a direct collision course with their ship. That just leaves the ship possibly being torn apart by the construction ship's gravity. However, the construction ship probably does not hold a substantial gravity well, seeing as it is relatively small, so the ship is not torn apart and she is able to successfully jump to hyperspace. That just leaves one question left. Why do the rebels not turn the failsafe off when they are inside of an interdiction field? Well, remember that the second function of the failsafe is to prevent the ship from being torn up by the gravity well. An interdiction field is still a gravity well, so it would still rip a ship apart if it tried to jump while inside of the field. So even if they did turn the failsafe off, they'd still be ripped apart by the gravity of the interdictor cruisers. So, to recap, there are two functions of the failsafe built into the hyperdrives. The first is to prevent the ship from ramming into things at light speed by pulling the ship out of hyperspace when it senses a gravity well that is approaching the ship. The second is to prevent a ship from entering hyperspace when it is too close to a gravity well to prevent the ship from being torn apart by the pull of gravity. The failsafe can be turned off, but the ship will be torn apart if it attempts to enter hyperspace while inside of a substantial gravity well. So, doing so is only applicable for the first case when a ship is approaching a gravity well. Now, this is starting to sound a lot like a video I made a while ago about why the Rebellion never sent a ship into the Death Star at light speed, which I would like to point out came out before The Last Jedi, so now I have to make revisions. This video has similar topics, so it seems like a good spot to do it. In the novelization of The Last Jedi, it is explained that one of the main reasons why Holdo's hyperspace ram is so effective was because of the advanced shield of the Raddus. I'd also like to point out that while the supremacy is huge, like within a degree of magnitude of the Death Star in terms of wingspan, it is not all that big in terms of the top to the bottom or the front to the back. This means that the Raddus is actually quite comparable in terms of size to the part of the supremacy that it is ramming. The Death Star, on the other hand, is huge all around, because it's a sphere. Sometimes I disappoint even myself. Anyways, even if the Rebellion had launched a ship like the home one into the Death Star, it wouldn't have really done much good. Some structural damage for sure, maybe bang up the outside a bit, but nothing that would really cause any flex tape requiring damage. And even if you disagree with me on the extent the damage would cause, and I'm not even sure about this, there's literally no way to calculate based on how little we know about hyperspace and physics in general in Star Wars. But even if you disagree, the Rebellion didn't even have Mon Calamari Star Cruisers at this point. They don't get them until after the mutiny on Mon Cala, which takes place after A New Hope. So the biggest thing they'd have would be, I don't know, maybe a CR-90 Corvette or something, but they don't even really see those at Yavin 4, so maybe an X-Wing, and I doubt that would really do anything. Oh, but what about the Battle of Endor, huh? They still could have done it there, so yeah. Well, as much as I'm sure you'd love to say that I'm wrong, you're forgetting about the shield generator. Yeah, remember that whole thing? It's kind of important to the 6th movie. If I had to guess, I'd say that the Emperor put the most over-the-top and expensive shield generator on Endor's moon to protect the Death Star Take 2. After all, he was on it. So I think it's pretty safe to say that any attempt to ram the second Death Star would have been just obliterated by that shield. And, well, that's going to do it for me. Make sure to subscribe the like button, smash the subscribe button, and comment the share button. You can also follow me on Twitter, at @Star_Wars_Galaxy. Please do that. I promise I'll do more stuff on it. Send me any plot holes you want me to try to explain in universe. And, thanks for watching. Bye.